Welcome to Sacred Truth. There are seasons when strength doesn't feel like confidence or victory. It feels like staying, waiting, and obeying when clarity is delayed. This message is for anyone walking through silence, pressure, and unanswered prayers, learning that true strength is not formed by emotion, but by faithfulness. If you've felt exhausted, unseen, or unsure of what God is doing in this season, this reflection will help you recognize how endurance, obedience, and discernment are quietly shaping you even now. Listen slowly, let the silence speak, and discover the strength you didn't know was forming within you. If this exploration helped you see Scripture as a living challenge rather than distant history, we invite you to continue with my channel. Support thoughtful engagement with Scared Truth by liking this video. Like and subscribe for future reflections where Scripture, history, and moral courage meet. And consider sharing this with someone wrestling with questions of faith, authority, or meaning. Tonight, before you hear anything else, you need to know this. I see you. Not the version of you that others applaud. Not the version of you that performs, explains, or pretends. But the one who sits quietly with questions you don't know how to name. I saw you when the noise finally stopped. When the room grew still. When the distractions faded and the weight you had been carrying all day settled into your chest. You did not imagine that heaviness. You were not being dramatic. And you were not weak for feeling it. There are moments when strength does not look like victory. There are seasons when endurance feels like emptiness. And there are nights when faith does not shout, it barely whispers. And yet, even there, I am present. You have been told many things about strength. You have been told that strength means never breaking, that it means standing tall, pushing through, staying positive, that it means surviving everything without ever asking why it hurts. But hear me carefully now. That is not how I define strength. Strength is not the absence of pain. It is not emotional numbness. It is not the ability to endure without question or tears. Strength, as I reveal it, is something far deeper and far more costly. There were nights when you wondered if something was wrong with you. You prayed, but the answers did not come quickly. You trusted, but clarity did not follow. You believed, but the path ahead remained hidden. And in that silence, you asked yourself, if I were truly strong, wouldn't I feel more confident? If I were truly faithful, wouldn't this be easier? If God were really with me, wouldn't I feel peace all the time? No one told you that these questions are not signs of failure. They are signs of awakening. You see, there is a kind of strength that is celebrated in the world, and there's a kind of strength that is forged in the presence of God. The world celebrates visible strength, immediate results, clear outcomes, confidence that can be measured and displayed. But I do my deepest work in hidden places. I strengthen people long before they ever see the results of that strength. Scripture does not say, blessed are those who never struggle. It says, blessed are the poor in spirit. Not because poverty of spirit feels good, but because it creates space. Space where pride can no longer rule. Space where illusions collapse. Space where my strength can finally take root. You have mistaken exhaustion for failure. You thought the weariness meant you were losing ground, that the resistance meant you were off course, that the waiting meant you were forgotten. But consider this. I do not strengthen people by removing all weight from their lives. I strengthen them by teaching them how to carry it without losing their soul. There is a reason I did not rush you out of this season. There is a reason I did not silence every doubt immediately. There is a reason I allowed you to feel the limits of your own control. Because there are forms of strength that only appear when your illusions finally fall away. When you can no longer rely on momentum. When motivation no longer carries you. When self-confidence reaches its end. That is not weakness. That is the doorway. You were never meant to be strong in the way the world demands. You were meant to be strong in obedience, strong in truth, strong in discernment, strong enough to stand still when everything in you wants to escape. This is the strength that does not run from silence, the strength that does not demand immediate answers, the strength that remains faithful even when clarity has not yet arrived. I know you wanted relief. I know you wanted the pressure to lift quickly. I know you hoped this message would immediately make everything feel lighter. And comfort is not wrong, but comfort alone does not transform a life. If I only soothed you without strengthening you, I would leave you unprepared. If I only reassured you without refining you, I would leave you vulnerable. If I only promised peace without teaching obedience, I would leave you unchanged. And I love you too much for that. So let me tell you the truth gently. You are stronger than you know, not because you feel strong, but because you are still here. Not because the storm has passed, but because you did not abandon your faith while it raged. Not because you understand everything, but because you chose not to walk away when understanding failed. That is not accidental. That is formation. There is a kind of strength that holds on. There is a kind of strength that waits. There is a kind of strength that does not collapse under unanswered prayers. And this is the strength I am cultivating in you now. But before I show you where this path leads, before I speak about endurance, obedience, and transformation, you must understand something essential. This season is not punishment, and it is not proof of your inadequacy. It is preparation. Not preparation for applause, but preparation for discernment. Not preparation for comfort, but preparation for truth. For now, remain here. Do not rush ahead. Do not judge yourself. Do not interpret this moment too quickly, because what feels like emptiness is often the place where my work becomes unmistakably real. There are moments when my silence feels louder than any word. You prayed, you waited, you listened. And what answered you was not direction, but stillness. No signs, no explanations, no immediate relief. And in that quiet, fear tried to speak for me. It whispered that I had stepped back, that you were being ignored, that your prayers had reached a limit. But silence has never meant abandonment, not with me. You must understand this. I do not speak the same way in every season. There are times when my voice comes clearly through scripture that burns in your heart, through wisdom that feels unmistakable, through doors that open without resistance. But there are other times, times far more important, when my silence becomes the message itself. You see, clarity without discernment can become dangerous. If I answered every question immediately, you would learn conclusions without learning obedience. If I removed every uncertainty quickly, you would trust outcomes more than you trust me. And if I spoke before your heart was ready to listen rightly, my words would become noise rather than truth. Silence is not absence. Silence is refinement. It strips away your habit of rushing. It exposes what you depend on when reassurance is gone. It reveals whether you seek my voice or merely my comfort. There is a reason Scripture does not say, "My people will always hear me clearly." It says, "Be still and know that I am God." Stillness is not passive, it is attentive. It is the posture of someone who stops demanding control and starts learning recognition. You have been tempted to fill the silence, to distract yourself, to replace waiting with activity, to substitute discernment with affirmation. But silence resists shortcuts. It does not reward urgency. It does not respond to emotional pressure. It does not bend to fear. Silence waits for honesty. And here's the truth you have not wanted to face. Some of the questions you asked me were not ready to be answered yet. Not because I withhold truth, but because truth, revealed too early, can harden instead of heal. You wanted direction, but direction without surrender becomes ambition. You wanted certainty, but certainty without humility becomes pride. You wanted reassurance, but reassurance without obedience becomes dependence. So I withheld not to punish you, but to protect you. There are things you can only hear once you stop arguing with silence. There are truths you can only receive once your need for immediate resolution fades. And there is strength that only forms when you choose to remain present, without explanation. Do you remember Elijah? He expected me in power, in wind, in fire, in earthquakes that could not be ignored. But I was not there. I came quietly. Not because I was weak, but because discernment requires stillness. You are learning now what many never learn, that my presence does not always announce itself. Sometimes it steadies you rather than excites you. Sometimes it convicts you rather than comforts you. Sometimes it asks you to stay rather than move. Silence exposes what still governs you. It reveals whether fear still leads your decisions, whether impatience still dictates your faith, whether you trust me only when outcomes feel close. And this is where strength begins to shift. Because Strength is not proven when answers come quickly. Strength is revealed when you remain faithful even when clarity delays, when prayer feels unanswered, when progress feels invisible, when obedience feels costly. You have not been stalled. You have been positioned. Positioned to hear without distortion. Positioned to obey without applause. Positioned to recognize my voice not because it excites you, but because it aligns you with truth. Silence removes false confidence. It dismantles spiritual shortcuts. It confronts the parts of you that confuse faith with feeling. And when those illusions fall, something quieter but stronger takes their place. You are learning to listen differently now, not for emotional reassurance, not for constant validation, but for alignment, for the subtle correction, for the restrained instruction, for the invitation that does not force itself. This is why I did not rush you forward. This is why I did not fill every quiet moment. Because before I strengthen your hands, I must steady your heart. Before I clarify your path, I must refine your hearing. And before I move you outward, I must anchor you inward. Remain attentive. The silence is already teaching you more than you realize. There is something you must understand now, even if it unsettles you at first. Strength is not measured by how inspired you feel. It is revealed by what you choose when inspiration fades. Emotion is powerful, but it is unstable. It rises quickly. It falls without warning. And if you build your faith on emotion alone, your foundation will never hold. I did not create you to live by feeling. I called you to live by faith. And faith, at its core, is obedience. You have felt moments of fire before, moments when worship lifted you, when words moved you, when truth felt immediate and alive, and those moments were not false, but they were never meant to carry you. Emotion awakens, but obedience sustains. There are many who feel close to me, yet never follow me. Many who are moved, but never transformed. Many who feel strengthened, yet remain unchanged. Because they confuse spiritual sensation with spiritual formation. Let me say this plainly. Feeling strong is not the same as being strong. Feeling peace is not the same as walking in truth. Feeling encouraged is not the same as being prepared. Strength is not something you experience once. It is something you practice daily. This is why I did not remove every struggle from your path. If strength were built through comfort alone, then discipline would be unnecessary. If faith were sustained by emotion alone, then obedience would be optional. But obedience is where strength takes shape. Obedience is rarely dramatic. It does not announce itself. It does not rush. It often feels small, repetitive, and unseen. It looks like choosing integrity when compromise is easier, like remaining faithful when no one is watching, like continuing to pray when prayer feels dry. This is where strength is forged. You asked me to make you stronger. But strength does not come from feeling empowered. It comes from learning to respond rightly even when you feel unsure. It comes from choosing truth even when emotion pulls you elsewhere. It comes from staying aligned even when affirmation disappears. This is why I allowed emotion to fade, not to punish you, but to reveal what remains when feeling is gone. And what remained was not emptiness. It was obedience waiting to be chosen. Do you remember when my son prayed in the garden? His emotions were not calm. His body trembled. His soul was in anguish. And yet, strength did not come from peace. It came from surrender. Not my will, but yours. That was not weakness. That was power refined through obedience. You have been standing at this same threshold, not between belief and disbelief, but between comfort and obedience, between wanting relief and choosing faithfulness, between feeling supported and walking forward without reassurance. This is where many turn back, but you did not. You stayed, even when obedience felt heavier than inspiration, even when the path ahead felt unclear, even when emotion could no longer carry you. That is strength. Obedience does not always feel righteous. Sometimes it feels lonely. Sometimes it feels unrewarded. Sometimes it feels misunderstood. But obedience always leads to alignment. And alignment always leads to transformation. This is why I trust you with silence. This is why I allow resistance. Because obedience, once chosen without emotion, becomes conviction, and conviction, once formed, cannot be shaken by circumstance. You are learning to obey not because you feel close to me, but because you know me. Not because it feels good, but because it is true. And this is the kind of strength that does not collapse under pressure. Many wait to feel ready before they obey. But readiness is not a feeling, it is a decision. A quiet one, a daily one, a costly one. And you have been making it even when you did not realize it. Your obedience in unseen moments has been shaping you more than you know, more than affirmation ever could, more than reassurance ever would. Because when obedience becomes your anchor, emotion becomes your companion, not your master. There is a kind of endurance that merely survives, and there is a kind of endurance that transforms. What you are walking through now is not the endurance of someone barely holding on, it is the endurance of someone being shaped. You have felt the pressure. Not the kind that passes quickly, but the kind that lingers, the kind that presses on your thoughts, that questions your assumptions, that forces you to confront what you once avoided. And you wondered, if this is strengthening me, why does it feel like something is being taken away? Because endurance does not add first, it proves. It reveals what can remain under weight. When metal is refined, it is not comfort that strengthens it, it is heat. Heat that separates what is true from what only appeared strong. And I do the same work within you. You thought endurance meant waiting until relief came. But endurance is not passive waiting. It is faithful resistance. Resistance against despair. Resistance against self-deception. Resistance against the temptation to abandon truth just to escape discomfort. Endurance tests your allegiance, not to comfort, not to outcome, but to truth itself. And this is where many misunderstand me. They believe endurance is something I impose, but endurance is something I invite. An invitation to remain aligned even when the cost becomes personal. There were moments when you considered retreat, not because you stopped believing, but because believing became exhausting. And in those moments, you did not receive applause, you received pressure. But pressure reveals what applause never could. You discover what parts of your faith were borrowed. Borrowed confidence, borrowed certainty, borrowed language that worked only when things were easy. And, under pressure, those borrowed things fell away. Not to shame you, but to free you. Because faith that survives pressure no longer depends on ideal conditions. It becomes grounded. It becomes honest. It becomes resilient. You were not being crushed. You were being clarified. Clarified in what you trust. Clarified in what you obey. Clarified in what truly governs your decisions. There is a reason I do not remove resistance too early. Resistance teaches discernment. It teaches you the difference between what feels urgent and what is truly important, between what demands reaction and what requires response. Endurance slows you down, not to delay your future, but to deepen your foundation, because speed without depth leads to collapse. And I am not building something fragile in you. You thought endurance meant becoming numb, but numbness is not strength. Endurance keeps your heart awake while training it, not to panic. It teaches you to feel fully without surrendering to fear. This is why I did not rush to rescue you. If I had removed the pressure immediately, you would have mistaken relief for growth. But growth requires resistance, not to destroy you, but to prepare you. You are becoming someone who does not break when certainty is delayed. Someone who does not abandon obedience when reward is postponed. Someone who does not confuse discomfort with disapproval. That is endurance refined. You are learning to carry weight without letting it define you, to hold questions without letting them rule you, to remain faithful without demanding immediate evidence. This endurance is shaping your vision. What once distracted you no longer holds the same power. What once defined you no longer controls you. And what once frightened you now only reminds you to stay anchored. You have come farther than you realize. Not because circumstances suddenly changed, not because everything became easier, but because you did not turn back. Strength is never revealed all at once. It reveals itself quietly in how you listen now, in how you wait now, in how you respond now to things that once controlled you. What is forming within you is not temporary resilience, it is discernment. Discernment that recognizes truth even when it does not arrive wrapped in comfort. Discernment that chooses obedience even when emotion is absent. Discernment that remains faithful without demanding reassurance. This is the strength you did not know you were gaining. You once asked me to take the weight away, but instead, I taught you how to carry it without losing yourself. You once asked me to speak louder, but instead, I trained you to listen deeper. You once asked me to move you forward quickly, but instead, I rooted you firmly so that movement, when it comes, will not undo you. Transformation does not announce itself. It is not marked by applause. It does not require recognition. It does not rush to be seen. It settles. And when it settles, it changes how you stand. You no longer react the way you used to. What once triggered panic now invites pause. What once demanded answers now receives patience. What once shook your faith now strengthens your resolve. This is not because you became harder, it is because you became clearer. And clarity carries responsibility. Not the burden of perfection, but the weight of faithfulness. Not the demand to control outcomes, but the call to remain aligned. Strength, once refined, is never meant to isolate you. It is meant to steady others. Not through preaching, not through performance, but through presence. Through the quiet authority of someone who has walked through uncertainty and remained anchored. You will notice this now. People will come to you not because you have all the answers, but because you do not panic when answers are missing. They will sense stability where there used to be striving. They will see peace that is not dependent on circumstance. And they will ask without words, "How are you still standing?" You do not need to explain everything. Your life will speak for you. Faithfulness always does. Do not rush to define this season. Let it finish its work. Let obedience continue shaping you. Let endurance continue refining you. Let silence continue sharpening your hearing. Because strength that is rushed often collapses under responsibility. But strength that is formed patiently becomes unshakable. I am not sending you back into the world as someone who merely feels better. I am releasing you as someone who sees more clearly, someone who moves more deliberately, someone who does not confuse urgency with importance, someone who understands that faith is not proven in comfort, but in alignment. There will still be questions. There will still be moments of waiting, but they will no longer threaten you because you now know the difference between absence and preparation, between delay and denial, between silence and abandonment. This is the strength you did not recognize when you first asked for it, and this is why I did not answer you the way you expected. Now, rest not in passivity, but in trust. Not because everything is finished, but because the foundation has been laid. What comes next will require you to stand firmly, listen carefully, and obey faithfully. And you are ready. Not because you feel strong, but because you have been formed.